Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani, and I'm joined by the effervescent David Cohen, excited as ever.
Very. This is Star Trek, baby.
Yes, we are going to spend the next 3 days, or three shows.
Days?
3 days. I'm locking you in the studio for 3 days to talk about nothing other than Star Trek, and more specifically, the Star Trek convention phenomenon. This summer, I just went with Dr. Richard Richter and Dr. Michael Weiner, two buddies of mine that we've been conventioning with through the years. And we were at the Las Vegas convention, so we're going to bring you there with the sights and sounds of the convention. Welcome, Dr. Richter.
Thank you, Douglas.
And Dr. Weiner, just so we can hear your voice.
Glad to be here.
Great. Dr. Weiner,
do we
yes.
have to call them doctors?
That's
Can
what
we
I'm
just
going to say.
call them Rich and Mike?
The last time we're going to call him doctor at this point.
Right.
Richard is a dentist in Patchogue, an office in Patchogue. You have another office somewhere else, right?
That's correct, Douglas, in East Quogue.
Okay, he's so well-spoken. He's better spoken than both of us combined, I think. And he's a dentist. And we have Michael Weiner, who is an ophthalmologist with 3 offices on Long Island, correct?
2 on Long Island, 1 in Queens.
I stand corrected. Speaking of being corrected, there are times when people are talking about the Star Trek convention, have a misunderstanding as to what it's all about. Believe it or not, it's been going on for 45 years. And such luminaries, is that the word?
Luminaries, you're
yes,
right.
Thank you. As Isaac Asimov has attended, especially the early conventions. Let's listen to a little of an introduction from Isaac Asimov and then Leonard Nimoy, sort of as to why and what this is all about. But before we do that, focus the first bit of the show on this phenomenon of Star Trek itself. Before we get to really the convention, to understand why there's a convention, you have to kind of understand a little of the history of the show. So we'll listen to this.
If it was intelligent enough to build a culture, then it had the right to live in that culture. And no other culture had a right to interfere with it as long as it was not endangering cultures beyond itself. Star Trek was, in a sense, the most meaningful. It tackled real social problems.
It to be done meaningfully. It to be done in a way which would be entertaining to those who are looking for entertainment, to be provocative for those who are willing to accept the provocative concepts that it presented, and in a way that would be uplifting for those who were available to that element. We are very, very proud of the fact that so many of the episodes captured so many of those important elements.
Dave, does that bring the genre alive for you a little bit?
First of all, how did you get such good quality on Leonard Nimoy? Sounds like he's speaking in the middle of the Holland Tunnel.
That was my own taping of 1973's convention. It was 1976 when I was there with Richard myself in New York City at the old Penta Hotel.
So you just held a microphone up while he was speaking?
I had one of those little cassettes, if you remember those little cassette players. So we were there enjoying that, and that's where that came from.
Yeah, look, hey, I like Star Trek. I don't really get the whole convention thing that you guys are into, but I'd like to know more about it, and I think so would our listeners, hopefully.
I think the first thing to say, though, is Star Trek, not Star Trek.
Did I say track? My mom used to say, "Are you watching Star Trek again?" And I'd correct her. I say Star Trek.
That's the first
way,
yeah, we understand that people are not really into.
And can I just ask another question? Are you guys Trekkies? Is there a distinction, or Trekkers? What's the politically correct word?
Well, I believe the difference or the distinction, David, is one is more of a fanatic and the other is more of like a follower, a casual fan. I think the Trekkie is more of the less serious fan. The Trekker really takes it very seriously.
Let's try to. Yeah.
Are you guys Trekkers?
We're going to try to figure that out with a little bit of a quiz here. We're going to do the history of Star Trek.
You're interrupting with the history again.
Yes, we have to start with the history. Let's start with this clip and tell me only a real fan and a Trekkie would know what
Lord Trekker?
this is from.
Which one?
Anybody? Where's this from?
That's from the original Star
All
Trek.
right, the original Star Trek. Let's try the next one.
I
The
even
End.
knew that.
That's the end. All right, we'll start easy. Anybody have that one? Oh, stunned them. That is the animated series ending. There were 22 animated episodes on Saturday morning. Let's try the next one. Let's see if you get this. Who's this? Come on, you got it.
Next Generation,
Next
of
Generation,
course.
176 episodes strong. From 87 to 94. Let's go to the next one.
Deep Space Nine, Douglas.
Yes, that's the Deep Space Nine, 176 episodes as
Rich,
well.
you're doing well. Mike, we haven't heard from you yet. Come on, buddy.
All right, let's see if you can get this one, Michael.
That is Star Trek Voyager.
That's his favorite. I know that. From 95 to 2001, Kate Mulgrew, the first female captain on that one. How about this one? My favorite.
That's Star Trek Enterprise.
Yes. Who was the captain? Scott Bakula?
Of course.
And finally, where's this from? Nope.
It's the motion picture.
That was number 6 where they signed off at the end. It was the last swan song. And I think I have one more. Let's see if we can get this one. Who's going to get this one? Where from?
It's also the original series, Douglas.
No, that is the new J.J. Abrams ending.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. So, there have been 12 movies, 24 hours of programming there. Just so we get an idea, there's 736 hours of entertainment that Star Trek has provided to date. There's my history. We're done for the next 3 shows.
Really?
Of
That's
history.
it?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little
Excellent
piece about that. Why is there so much about Star Trek? Why is it good on and on and on? Michael, Richard, who's got an answer?
Star Trek originated in the 1960s when there was a lot of civil unrest. It was the time when Gene Roddenberry brought to the studio a time in the future when people got along, whether you were of color or of different nationality, and it created a situation where people knew that in the future things would be better, and people were able to relate to that.
All right, let's see what Simon Pegg says about that, the new Scotty.
The series was such an interesting proposition because it was a show that was about something fantastic. It didn't have the budget to be that visually fantastic. So they would boil down the story to something really, really human and personal. And they became these fantastic little plays in space. They were really thoughtful, and they always had a moral and social messages which you had to unpick. That kind of stuff, I think, is fundamentally what Star Trek's about. You know, it's a metaphor.
That I agree with 100%, but I don't know if everybody agrees with that. Richard?
Thank you, Douglas. For
Racing's
me,
hand.
and I've seriously always thought this, with sincerity, it was a beacon of hope for the future during a time when people, I think, were frightened. They were really, they were afraid of what the future was going to hold. They were digging out basements where they could have nuclear shelters and bomb shelters, and
there's also another port of Star Trek that I would suggest.
Start to the right and straight on till morning.
That's from Peter Pan, and we will leave you for a few moments with that thought. And why did I play that? And then since we've done the history now, we can ease up and listen to Dave's concerns, I would say, that we have about Star Trek and why we're involved with Star Trek conventions. From Citizen Kane. The significance of Rosebud with regard to Star Trek is hard to fathom at this point. What I'm going to try to suggest is that out of all of the entertainment between the books and the comic books and the, of course, television series and movies and radio plays, Star Trek can be boiled down, in my view, to a simple phrase. Just like Rosebud boiled down, right, Citizen Kane's life into one word. If you watch that brilliant movie, you hear that one word and you know, if you've seen the movie, what his life was all about, what the turning point in his life was all about. So that's where I'm at. I want to search in this half of the show on Everything Old is New Again to try to see why people are listening to, watching, reading Star Trek, and then thereafter be so inspired as to go to a Star Trek convention. To me, it's the topics that are political. We've talked about this earlier. Political themes, sociological themes, little plays that have some metaphor and some meaning to them. Anybody have any that come to mind? Remember the Frank Gorshin episode in the original show, Richard?
Yeah, one of my favorites, Douglas, and I'm going to say about 8 months ago, I discussed it with all my kids, and I had 4 of them down in our little home theater watching it, and then we were talking about it.
Why? What's it all about?
Well, it's
briefly.
It's all about racism. It's white on one side, black on the left, right on the right, and the opposition was just reversed of that, and it showed you the stupidity.
Right, they were two aliens fighting each other based on their color of the skin, white, black, but different sides of the face having the black. So it really was significant for the time. Dave, you remember that one?
No.
Okay. Do you remember the one when Kirk was split into 2?
Yes, that I remember.
And what do you remember about that?
One was bad. He was a bad guy and a good guy.
And it's sociological or psychological, right, Michael? It kind of helped to define what human beings are, at least try to, in some way?
Everyone has an evil side and a good side, and together they need to combat each other, and hopefully the good wins over the evil. But if they're separated, there's no way to control the evil side.
So these are thoughtful, provoking topics, I think, from the 1960s. Let's go.
Well, yeah, because people weren't thinking back then.
Correct.
So it's amazing.
Is that nice? Well, what were they watching? They were watching I Love Lucy. They were watching The Honeymooners. They were watching reruns. 60s, they were watching what?
Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, this was thought-provoking.
Are you saying Gilligan's Island wasn't thought-provoking?
They were thoughts.
I take offense to that.
There were different kinds of thoughts. Let's take a look at what The Next Generation did. A little something here.
Cinder! His face black, his eyes red. Tamak! The river Tamak! In winter, Damak. And Jalad. At Tanagna, Damak, and Jalad on the ocean.
That makes about as much sense as I do half the time, right, Dave?
I feel like I'm just immersed in incredible geekdom right now, and I'm very uncomfortable. Now there's different languages going on.
What is the beauty of that show, Michael?
I'm afraid.
What do you find is the beauty of that particular episode, which I find to be one of the best ever?
Well, the Next Generation shows Patrick Stewart, a Shakespearean trained actor, to be the head of the Enterprise, and he was able to provide a type of acting that was not seen before.
And in this particular episode, it showed how language develops and different people, can communicate different ways. You started off not understanding a word, just like a lot of our listeners may not have, but at the end of that episode, you understood everything that person said, what it was all about. Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, it's thought-provoking. This is interesting stuff. You got to see the look on Dave's face. We're going to put that on. Take a picture. Let's put that on the Facebook.
If I may, Douglas, it showed you that breaching the cultural divide isn't always an easy task. And once you do that, there's a common understanding.
And we could certainly use that today, right?
Absolutely.
Certainly there were other topics such as dealing with fate versus free will. There was one episode where Captain Picard was brought to an afterlife and given an opportunity to relive his life not performing or doing a certain thing that he thought was a mistake, having a fight with a Nausicaan. We're going to get too far afield here, but with someone that got him a heart problem for the rest of his life. And he went back and redid that, where he didn't have this fight, and that fight was the turning point of his life that made him the person that he is. He was no longer a captain even, because he had changed the pivotal point of his life that he thought was something that was a mistake. Yes, no? Different?
Yeah, great episode. It shows you each one of us, our character develops. We're really the sum of our experiences. That's what makes us who we are.
Exactly. We also dealt with old age. We had Scotty come on the show in a show called Relics, and he came on the show and he went into the old, they have an area where you can make up things like a stage, and he went into the old bridge, and on the old bridge he felt comfortable. and he was, in a different place when he was on the Next Generation. He was kind of transported there over time. And what did that show mean to you, Michael, at all?
I thought it was great that they were bringing back the old characters, the old actors, and it was a little campy, perhaps. That episode was not very serious, but it was really great to see some old friends.
But it also showed him saying, listen, this was my old bridge. I can't live in the past. I have to move forward. I have to now learn a new way of living in this new culture, this new, he time traveled another 150 years in the future. And it's about getting old and taking a grip with age and how to deal with age. Let's take a look at and listen to my favorite, Mr. Captain Kirk himself.
Second star to the right and straight on till the morning.
Why do I keep coming back to that? Anybody have a clue? No. My thought is that that's the rosebud for Star Trek.
What's the rosebud?
That statement. Second star.
What did
right.
he say? I couldn't even hear it.
You want to play that? Can you play that again,
No,
Chris?
please don't. Just tell me what he said.
Yeah, play it again, Chris.
Course heading, Captain.
Second star to the right and straight on till the morning.
Second star to the right, straight on to the morning.
He says that at the end of the last movie that they're in as a group together, and that just shows the fun, the adventure, and the childlike quality of the entire Star Trek genre, if you ask me. Total silence, nothing.
Nobody asked you, but it's interesting. Look, I really, listening to you guys and having watched the shows, I agree that there were a lot of social issues, a lot of food for thought when you watch these shows. But when are we going to talk about, that the importance of the show to, how it's been elevated by the conventions that you guys go to every year? Where's that connection? That's what
we'll
I'm
talk
missing.
about that in 2.5 minutes in the second part of our show.
You promise?
I promise. We'll
and
get right
Trekkers
to it.
versus Trekkies?
No, I don't think we're going to approach that at all. That's an irrelevancy.
I think just the quiz that we had shows you the difference. We're clearly Trekkies because we didn't have the answers to everything.
Okay.
Well,
thank you, Rich. Thank you.
You say we didn't have the answer to everything. I knew all of it.
Well, you had them written in front of you. Well, you put the clips together. You knew where they came from.
What happened to the
Yeah, what does that
facade
mean?
of me being Mr. Star Trek?
You're a
That-
Trekker because you put all those clips together for that reason alone.
You know what I love? We have the opportunity finally once to actually talk about Star Trek instead of just inferring it from one show to the next. I finally have an opportunity to talk about it.
That's true. What would be crazy if somehow you brought Star Trek into Star Trek? I'd like to see you do that.
I'm bringing Peter Pan into Star Trek, though, now. Isn't that inspiring?
Not really.
No, doesn't do it for you. All right, well, Michael, tell me a little something about why you go to a Star Trek convention. What do you get out of it? Listen to this background. Do you hear this? There is. We're in broadcasting, by the way, in MacArthur Airport, and right now they're having a little bit of I would suggest, a holiday concert in the background. So,
Yeah. It's really quite loud.
Dave, do me a favor. Open that window. Open that door. Let's see if we can hear. Listen to this. This is our competition. There literally are 3, 4, 7 people watching us, and which are in a glass booth, and there's probably about 40 people watching that guy belt out that song in a poor manner.
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
Maybe our listeners would like to hear more of that. I don't know.
Michael, what do you go to conventions for? What's it all about?
Star Trek.
Can you sing it, Michael? That might be more.
That's just not.
Star Trek.
We have 30 seconds, by the way, just for the heck of it.
That's not going to happen. But Star Trek started in the '60s when I was a little kid, and it's almost been on the air continuously since then. It's a time when people who have similar interests can get together.
Go ahead.
See stars that we've known since we were growing up. Have them talk about their lives, what Star Trek means to them, and it's always a lot of fun.
Thank you, Michael.
That's so rude. Guy drives all the way here. You're cutting him off.
We will be right back. Come on back. We are back. Everything old is new again for a little inside look as to what's happening at the studio here. Michael, I had to cut you off there because I needed to get my clip about Peter Pan and showing the juxtaposition of Captain Kirk and Peter Pan from the movies in the 50s saying what they were saying.
So why did you ask him the question in the first place if you knew you had to cut him off?
He was looking at me like with this forlorn look that he hadn't had an opportunity to say something that he wanted to say. So you have 30 seconds, Michael. Go.
So,
no pressure.
No pressure.
So we've been going to these conventions, and what brings us back year after year? If you go to a movie once, maybe you're not going to that movie again. You're going to go to something different. But it's always a new experience. There's always new things to hear. The actors are people. They're not just the person they portray on stage, on TV or in the movies. So it's very.
And we'll explore that right after this.
This show is sponsored by ResumeDoctorInc.com. When you're looking for a job, changing your career, or applying for a promotion, your resume is the first thing seen that represents you to a potential employer. Make sure your resume makes a clear, concise, and professional impression of who you are so you can get that job. Send your current resume to ResumeDoctorInc at AOL.com for a free online review. You'll receive a reasonable quote to properly prepare your resume. Let us make sure you have a resume that will get you noticed. Send your resume or questions to ResumeDoctorInc at AOL.com. That's ResumeDoctorInc at AOL.com.
Get a life, will you, people? For crying out loud, it's just a TV show. I mean, look at you. Look at the way you're dressed. You've turned an enjoyable little job that I did as a lark for a few years into a colossal waste of time.
There's my man, William Shatner, Captain Kirk himself, speaking to the Star Trek fan at a convention, a hypothetical convention on Saturday Night Live. Remember that one?
Yes, I do.
I think it was the 80s, right?
I do, yes. He then later said he was the evil twin Captain Kirk.
What do you mean? At a convention later on, trying to explain why he was doing that. But as an idea, we've talked about this many times, and he's talked about it. He was out of the convention circuit for quite a while, and was not a man that was interested in doing this at all. Now there's not a convention that goes on, and there's 5 or 6 or 7 a year that he's not at. He's at every single convention. Michael, why do you think he's involved? Do you have any idea?
Well, I'm sure there's a monetary aspect to this, and I think he really enjoys it.
What do we call him at the convention? He's the
Babe Ruth.
The Babe Ruth of Star Trek conventions. He's tremendous on stage. He's funny. He brings stories in. And we're going to talk about the convention experience now from this point forward, from this show, the next show, and the show after. And we'll explore and see and listen to what happens at a convention here at Everything Old is New Again. I'm with David Cohen, the effervescent, omnipresent co-host. As well as Dr. Richard Richter and Dr. Michael Weiner. Thank you. Welcome back. I have a history with Richard. We eventually got to meet each other in junior high school, and in 1976, we went to the Penta Hotel, first one we went to, in New York City. Comic books were a big part of it, but it was a Star Trek convention. Do you remember that?
I do, Douglas, but we really go back to 5th grade, actually, and I thought our first one was at the library.
No, the library was after that, because that was in 78 talking about the motion picture. We went before the motion picture was even talked about.
Yes, I stand corrected.
Okay, and when we went to that convention, we were 14, 15 years old.
Yes.
What we've been going ever since. What's up with this?
No, it was simple. I mean, we were fans of the show, and back then there was no internet, there was no video streaming, there wasn't even VHS tapes yet, I don't think. So where else were we going to go to satiate our hunger?
And you guys obviously brought dates to this, right?
We brought dates from that.
Yes,
How do you think we got our prom date eventually? Speaking of that, let's see what the community is all about.
There is nothing nicer than just unbridled enthusiasm. You know, when you get together with a bunch of people and you all like the same thing, there's a huge sense of community. It's infectious, you know.
And that's Simon Pegg from the new Scotty, and he's talking to the audience and all of us, trying to define and understand why Star Trek conventions. What are we all about? What are we doing here? Dave, you, as a person that's never been to one, have any interest in or some point of view that you haven't heard as of yet, or questions that's been yet to be answered?
Well, I have a lot of questions that have not been answered yet. No, I'd like to know what... So you guys, I understand back then there was no internet. I mean, you went to this because you were fans. That makes sense. But flash forward now, X number of years, you're still going to these conventions. What's the allure now?
I think some of it is and we've been asked that question, by the way, by some of, we've had sit-downs with, we'll call them the stars of these shows. They have these opportunities where you can sit down and have like a little dessert with them.
So the actors ask you that same question?
Yes.
That's pathetic. Don't you see how pathetic that is?
Well, I don't know about
that. They're being paid, and they're saying, guys, come on, give it up.
What's it all
already.
about?
Why
It's more about the community.
Gee, Dave, that hurts.
It's the shared experience of the three of us, and
Sorry.
we have an opportunity to talk about something that we love, enjoy, and it builds a foundation for the next year, and the relationship just grows from there. It's like Met fans going to a ball game, in some ways. No,
Not quite.
No, because Derek Jeter would never ask, "Oh, Doug, you're here again. Why do you keep coming to Yankee games?"
Well, everybody asks me, why do I keep going to Met games?
Exactly.
That's a whole other show.
Well, let's listen and see if we get any words of wisdom from a 10-year-old that was at a recent convention.
How old are you, Paris?
I'm 10.
Okay, and you're here with who?
My grandpa. He's in fact the only one who's brought me before. Most fun I've been having is meeting new friends.
Hey, Granny, have you met friends at the convention?
Yes.
And you stay in touch with them after the convention?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's kind of cute, and we have a waiver signed by her and her grandfather allowing her to be on the show. And she was at the recent Vegas convention.
That explains her, but again, and I'm sorry if I was rude before. I was a little rude. But when these actors are asking you why are you still there, what do you say? What is the reason?
We get up and leave.
No, come on. I mean, there's a reason. What is it?
There is. Rudy, let me just. Oh, David, I'm sorry. Rude. Anyway, no. I mean, we're three grown men professionals, and this is something that. For me, I love to get together with my friends over something light. My wife isn't going to let me just fly to Vegas, to have a wild, weekend with the boys. But a Star Trek convention, she goes, sure, sweetheart, you go. You have a good time.
It's funny. When I got married, had been going, and it's sort of now, if I don't go, I'm going to lose that 3, 4, 5 day respite from the family. So now I have to go, if you will.
All right, so it's a guy's thing. It's something you've been doing together. It's a good escape. You just hang out, have fun.
Yeah, we've seen and heard many of these people over and over and over again. We'll talk about that in the next show, what we've seen and heard. But Michael, is there something that, like I met Michael at the convention with Richard about 10 years ago, and we're friendly ever since. And is there something that you found at the convention that is of interest to you? That, I mean, if you've heard these people talk, you've got autographs, you've got photographs. What's the camaraderie about? Or is there any theological discussions? What's going on behind the scenes?
I don't think it's anything quite that serious. These people are mortal. Shatner, Nimoy, they're in their 80s. They're not going to be around forever. And if we don't take the time to enjoy the people that we like now, eventually they're not going to be here. So it's really nice to be able to relive that experience over and over.
See, that's the opportunity where I wanted a really long answer from Michael, and he shortened it up for me. You got 2 minutes. You can get no. But no, that leads me to another thought: is that the immediacy of us being able to interact not only with the fans, but with the people that are on the show, whether they're a star or a bit player, one-on-one, does have some level of attraction, does it not?
Some of the lesser-known stars will sit and talk to you for quite a long time, and they're just people. They're actors. They enjoy their work, but the same as a lawyer, financial person, dentist. And so being able to talk to them as a person and not their character, you get a feeling for who they are, and it's a nice experience.
So is that what brings you back every year? Is it? I understand the camaraderie with the three of you, but in terms of seeing, to me, would be like, you're seeing the same thing over and over again every year. It's sort of like the same troupe of actors.
We're not just doing that. We are also enjoying whatever city we happen to be in, whether it's Boston, Philadelphia, Las Vegas. So it's not all Star Trek.
Dinners out, that kind of thing.
Right. We will certainly cover the evenings of our Las Vegas convention in the next show. That's a lot of fun. All along those lines, though, there are different guests and guest stars at every convention. Michael, you had dinner with one, I remember a little ways back, that was a bit player in one of the episodes, but you had a great experience with him. Do you remember that?
Of course, I remember that. It was at the convention near the Meadowlands in New Jersey, and I spent the whole evening with the actor and his wife, and turned out we had a lot in common, And it was really nice to get to know them.
And now when you watch the episode, it's kind of bizarre, but you have a real experience with that person that was on television 50 years ago on this show that you love.
Who was it? Suspense is killing me.
Join the galaxy's largest official Star Trek convention in Las Vegas with 100 Star Trek guest stars and 4 captains. Beam into the intergalactic party of the year.
We all have collectively just beamed to Las Vegas 2014, the Star Trek convention. How's it feel, Dave?
Oh, God.
Was that because the transporter was unnerving? Is that why you say that?
No, it's what you just said was unnerving. I'm not beaming anywhere with you, okay?
Through the power of radio, all of us are now there. Imagine it. Isn't it wonderful?
If I close my eyes. All right, let me just close my eyes for a minute.
Yes.
No,
you'll
I'm
fall
not there.
asleep.
I'm not there.
We want to kind of roll up our sleeves now and talk about the convention itself, what the layout is.
I'd like to. Right. I wasn't there. I don't go to them, but it would be interesting to hear what it's like.
Okay, so we could start off where we arrive the night before, and basically you'll hear now from this point on, Michael and Richard are the eyes and ears of everything old is new again.
Okay, so when you're leaving, what do you say to your wives when you're leaving to go on this?
Live long
trek?
and prosper.
That's what you say to your wife.
No, I'm just kidding. You say goodbye. What do you say?
Yeah, what can you possibly say, Dave?
I mean, do they care you're leaving? What is it? What is it now? How has it evolved?
My wife is actually very supportive of it. No kidding. She actually came to one of the conventions with us, if you remember,
Jersey,
Douglas.
Yes.
And she had a great time, but she did say to me, I enjoyed it, but it's kind of like a boys-only club, and I'm going to let you guys have fun on your own.
But I would suggest that there's a boys-only club because of us. At the conventions, you do get, I'm going to say, 40% female, something like that. There is a large portion of the...
You're imagining. There's no way there's 40% female.
There is.
Come
Definitely.
on.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
At Las Vegas, maybe, because everyone has an escort.
Now we're at the Rio in Las Vegas.
But okay,
we're there.
But I give you the 40% in Las Vegas. What about other conventions?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No doubt. No doubt. They love the cosplay. We'll talk about that in another show. They're involved. There's a whole new they love the costume. There's a whole new undercurrent of what's going on, which we'll talk about down the line.
Okay.
But first, let's place us there. There's what's there. We're at the Rio. They have a huge convention area, bigger than I would suggest, different layout, but bigger than even the Javits Center, where they have the Comic-Con. The Javits Center's got one huge room, and that's about it. Here you've got a number of different rooms. You've got a main theater, which seats approximately 15,000, what would you say? What's the number there? There's 15,000 attendees, and they say that no one will want for a seat. Everyone has an assigned seat. So let's say it's probably about 10 to 15,000 in that one main theater.
And when you guys go in, do you go in with a game plan, like how you're going to approach it?
Oh, yeah, there's a schedule of events. Richard, what do we usually do on that front?
Yeah, well, Douglas, you lay out the schedule for us. You're very organized.
Really, Doug? You take control of this whole convention planning? That's so unlike you.
In fairness, he does an excellent job. Michael and I are always very happy with,
I'm sure
with
he
him
does.
laying out the itinerary.
And Michael, when we walk down to the night before, we get our tickets, we walk down to the convention center. Besides the main room, what is there?
Surprisingly, they put a lot of effort into making replicas of some of the scenes from the original series, and we were able to take photos with that. Props that had been used, and it was really a very well done introduction to the convention, which was going to start the next day.
All right, let's hear a little piece of our experience there.
Harlan Ellison wrote a show, I think it was called City on the Edge of Forever, and there was a prop piece which was like a time machine, and that prop piece was actually on site today, correct?
Yes, any participant could just position themselves in the prop and make believe that they were in the movie. A lot of people were lined up taking photos, and that'll be a memory to forever.
I think another prop was the original transporter room had been recreated.
It was also similar. It was the transporter room where people would beam up and beam down. Beam me up, Scotty.
Michael, you were much more excited. I could tell you were there because compared to how you just described it here in the studio, I could hear the excitement in your voice. No, I'm serious. I'm serious.
You know what? Being there really is.
See, this is after. It's not as exciting now. Picture yourself back there now.
That's why I brought the video camera with me.
I got to say, being there is an experience that's very hard to reproduce once you get home. When you're there, it's just such an interesting thing with so many people who are all into it. It's you can't explain that.
And time travel is always difficult, as you mentioned, the Guardian of Forever. If just to refresh anyone's memory as to what we actually saw at the convention, they recreated this character. If you remember this piece.
Before your sun burned hot in space, and before your race was born, I have awaited a question. What are you? I am the Guardian of Forever. I am my own beginning, my own ending.
Wouldn't that be nice, huh? But that, if you remember the show, that set piece was there, recreated like nothing else. It was as if you were right in the movie itself or the TV show itself. No.
Yeah, Douglas, we loved it. I mean, we, as a rule, everybody who's listening, we have never dressed up for a Star Trek convention. But for this, we put on like these replica T-shirts, the cheap kinds, from the original series. And we had somebody take a picture of us, jumping through the Guardian. It was great.
And the transporter we beamed out of.
That's right.
And what do you do with those photos, by the way?
As I said, I promise I will get them to you one of these days.
But all right, I understand that. I'm asking for my photos, which I haven't received yet, so that I can print them out and do it with what I do with it. What do you do with those photographs?
I don't laugh. I actually have them as a screensaver on my computer. And like so many other digital photos now, they're kind of in my hard drive, but the screensaver thing is great.
What do you do with yours, Doug?
I put them in a book. I've got a book, and I'm going to be recreating in my basement a bar that's from the show, and I'm going to have lots of set pieces and lots of pictures surrounding my basement, my finished-off basement bar area. I'm waiting for that to be done. I've got to make a few more dollars before I can get that.
I wish our listeners could see the excitement on the faces of Mike and
it's like
Mike and Rich. They're like, when are we coming over?
It's going to be Quark's bar down in my basement. It's going to, if anybody.
I can taste the Romulan ale now.
Dude, this is what it's all about. Now, Michael, I know you're a little less reticent to display every photograph you get, but I know there's a certain few that you do display either in your office or at home. What do you do with these?
I like to display photos that I've taken with the actor because that means something to me. Photo that I've taken with Bill Shatner or Leonard Nimoy, Gates McFadden, or Scott Bakula.
That's pretty cool.
And those are fun.
Plus, also, we've had photographs in different conventions. They recreated the bridge of the Enterprise, the original, and then in Las Vegas they used to have the recreation of the Next Generation bridge. We had photographs taken there, so it kind of brings you around to feel a little bit more a part of the show. I don't know what is going to happen, though, down the line. Like, my kids see these photos and all that when they're older. And, is it going to be something that they're going to think positively about or not? What do your kids think about this, Richard?
Well, they enjoy, just as I do, the photographs of you and Michael and I with the actors or in one of the background scenes. I mean, that's good times. That's, you reminisce about these things. The autograph photos, those are, you're right. They have no interest in them, unfortunately. But so they'll probably gather dust and end up at a garage sale.
But these set pieces are tremendous. The set pieces give us a nice feel for the show, and we'll play that a little bit as a background because that is the computer of the Enterprise, and that's bringing us to the present day. I mean, one thing we need to not forget is that this show forecast computers, discs, telephones. Cell phones, I should say. It's like all good science fiction, predicted the future, did it not, Michael?
It's incredible. In fact, Bill Shatner hosted a show about what from Star Trek actually came to be in modern day, and the
You broke the computer, Michael.
Yes.
What'd you do?
So the writers really had a lot of forethought.
They did. And we will come back on Everything Old is New again next week, talking about the Star Trek convention, and we're going to explore the autograph experience in more detail. Come on back to Everything Old is New again. Welcome back to Everything Old is New again. Douglas Viviani with David Cohen, and our special guests today are Richard Richter and Michael Weiner. Michael wanted to give us a little different point of view on a question we talked about previously, Trekkers versus Trekkies.
You know, often the Star Trek fans get bad press.
No.
You wouldn't believe it, but it's true. Nerdy.
Come on.
Never go outside. Never talk to a girl. So, in some respects, the Trekkie is a derogatory term that is used to describe that person. Where people who like Star Trek can refer to them as themselves as Trekkers, which is a nicer term.
So Trekker has a girlfriend. A Trekkie does not have a girlfriend.
That could be.
Okay.
Interesting, Dave. That's I could see during this whole experience, other than the music interlude that we had previously in the studio here, that you are struggling a little bit with the conversation, or are you enjoying it?
I was in the beginning. I was struggling a little bit because I didn't really get the whole convention thing and why you guys go every year. But after talking and listening to you guys, it's starting to make sense. It really is. The fact that it's something you guys do together, it's a fun, a guys thing to do. I get it. I guess some guys go, look, I go on trips to see out-of-town hockey games with some friends. So to me, that's...
What's hockey?
I think it was in Star Trek Episode 3.
They've never approached that.
Yeah, so I understand the guy trip thing. And this rebuilding the sets. Yeah, I would get it. If I was a fan of the show and I could have my picture taken in a set, I mean, there's a... kind of a nerdish quality that I have too. I can relate to that.
Great. We hope you relate to it. We will all be back at the next show of Everything Old is New again. Come on back. We could be talking about autographs and photographs at the convention.
That's why I'm doing your show, because when I saw the title of it, I said, "Oh, this is a platform, man." So.
Oh, I love it. That's tremendous. I appreciate that with Dr. Weller. The idea. Maybe you can explain on the air here what you think of the show, or at least the concept of our show.
Well, the attraction to do this show was the context of realizing your past and your history, and not just sort of honoring it like doing a Fred Astaire memorial, but to contextualize the past subsequently so that we don't make the same mistakes, or that we have a guidepost. All the things I've been talking about doesn't matter whether it's myths or whether it's history. Those things fascinate me because my PhD is in Renaissance Italian art history and how to look at paintings. And the way, for instance, just for what I teach kids, is like the way you're going to look at this painting here is exactly the way they looked at it back then, and the way you look at a movie now. So all that stuff that we talk about, what's entertaining in movies, is the same thing that entertained people in the past about art. And so everything is old is new again. It's history, man. It's the second I saw it, I said, this has got to be a history show.
And
pop
it's
culture show.
Even though it's pop culture history, pop culture back in the day. Guess what? The Renaissance art was the pop culture of the day. So let's not.
You got to see that. But wow. You know what? Everything in its day is pop culture.
And I'm so happy to have had you. I wonder, maybe we'll have you back. We'll put you on the spot at this point if you're welcome to anytime you like.
No, David Cohen,